Hello, welcome to another one of our videos, and today I'm talking about power training and why it's so important, not just for sporting athletes but for everyone. So let's get into it. So power training is quite unique. It's something that very misunderstood, and it's neglected, even abused in many strength programs, just because people just don't understand what its purpose is, or even if it's relevant to them. So in simple terms, it's the ability to exert maximum muscular contraction instantly in an explosive burst of movement. So as examples here of throwing a ball, or obviously what most people think of Olympic weightlifting, where it's an explosive movement, but as much as it is involved in that, is involved in many more things. So obviously it's very common to sporting activities, and as they do, require a fair amount of explosive power, as you would see in a serve in tennis here, and exploding out of the blocks. So you can see both of them make very explosive movements, two different sports, and neither of them are needing hand cleans and stuff either. But even in other sports like basketball and that, there's a bit of an endurance capacity. There's a power movement from trying to break away from an opponent, or even chasing someone. Even a tackle in rugby or AFL football. The need to produce power is an essential component of their sport, and it's being used all of the time. But if you don't play sports, it's not the only time we ever see it. So even many daily activities, we need the ability for this. So things just like walking upstairs, for example, or having to get across the road quickly, require a certain explosive element of the muscle fibres in the fast twitch side to do things. As starting a lawnmower be another thing. There's sort of an element of strength, but it's usually not strength that's the key. It's actually the speed of the movement that is. So the big thing to understand here is that we lose this ability really quickly. So if you're not doing anything to train it, you're actually losing it way faster than your strength. And I'll go into detail of that a bit more as we go, but just bear that in mind. If you're not a person that plays sports, you're losing it rapidly, and that's going to become a big problem later on. So just to define power training so you get clear on what it actually is. So I used to think that if you got stronger, it would automatically make you faster, but that's not necessarily the case. Strength doesn't relate to power training, right? So if that did, all you would ever see is bodybuilders running in the Olympics. But you don't see bodybuilders running in the Olympics, and even though they've got a good muscle strength and hypertrophy as such, they don't have explosive power, because most of their training is done at slow speed, very slow tempos, to build the muscle fibers to grow in muscle size. Where power athletes are very strong and use strength training, but using it explosively. So to understand what power is there's a little equation, the force versus velocity equation, and I'll show you what that looks like here. So as you see on this curve here, we see where power is located. It's in the middle, it's not at the top. So speed sort of right down here, and then speed, strength, and then it's power and strength and speed, more strength than speed here, but maximal strength is here. So this is where people working with really heavy loads, like close to 90%. To work at that sort of strength element, it moves too slow. You can't move something that big fast enough. If you want to develop power, you need to actually make it lighter. You need to be on this lighter sort of side here for it to move fast. That's why medicine balls, they're not necessarily heavy, but it's not the load that's important to it, it's how fast you can move it that is. Alright, so this is very important to know if you want to train this skill. Alright, and you'll see several examples where I'll show you that. So here's an example of a chest press. The guy's looks like 50 kilo dumbbells in each hand. There's no way this guy can move this fast enough to generate power. He's definitely building strength and muscular size, but it's moving way too slow to develop power. If I wanted to develop power, I'd need to lighten the load to move it quicker. Alright, so if it takes more than 400 milliseconds to develop the muscle, it simply you can't switch it on like a light bulb like that, right? So the power training requires lighter loads than the maximal strength. All right, so this is a very important part of understanding the power. So when we're relating this gym training exercises to how you move in sports, you just think, okay, I'm sort of in that mid to high velocity, so I need a certain element of strength, but not so much that it slows me down. And the contact time of the foot during sprinting is about 100 milliseconds, so it's not long enough to produce half of maximum force. So the strength training is very important, but you have to sort of really choose the exercises carefully, and the load probably more carefully on if you want to get the most out of it. All right, so the difference is the length of time it takes to complete it. All right, so how to create power movement. So power initiation relies a lot on deceleration skills, so there's braking more or less, in terms of muscular strength and your body mechanics. So it means you have to really understand the positions to be in for you to be able to decelerate quickly enough. So this is again where we say technique is so important. It's so important for power training. You can get away with little things on strength to some degree, but you won't get away with power training. If there's any sort of weakness in your technique, you will be found out with these movements, because there's just no time. They're just so fast. With the slow moving things like the chest press, you can sort of like sense when things aren't there, and you get a chance to sort of adjust it. In the power, it's just too fast. You don't have time. You have to really rehearse your technique carefully to be able to do it right. So one thing to understand with the power training, even if it's for the arms, the power must come from the legs. So that dumbbell chest press would be a very poor choice for developing pushing power. I would really be better to do it as I'm standing here with the torsionator, with a squat movement where I can use what's called triple flexion. You can see the triple flexion here of the foot, which is triple flexion means the ankle, the knee and the hip all extend at the same time. So here, see how it's going, so that both of them are going into their full flexion and extension, loading up, so where she would squat down, it's loaded, and then explode out of it to unload. And then in both cases you're moving forward, in this case sprinting, in this case pushing. All right, but the triple flexion was needed for both, and in this case the arm strength came from the legs. It doesn't matter how big your arms are or strong your arms are, it's irrelevant, because all the strength comes from the legs. All right, so the ultimate goal is to shift the force velocity curve so great, so that the greater force requirements are not decreases in velocity. So if she makes this bar too heavy, it slows her down. So we would build strength but not power. So she may in very well be able to move double that load, but if it moves so slow, all I'm doing is developing strength, not the explosive triple extension that we were looking for. All right, so it's where you have to understand that it's better to be lighter. Jumping activities are a classic. So and again, jumping so this example of a jump here is what makes the box jump. So the squat is the same timing used for a jumping activity. So when you're really learning to develop your speed and power, and the deadlift as well, sometimes the deadlifting are really sort of bending forward to create that acceleration, so that the knee and the hip movement working perfectly with perfect timing and alignment positioning is everything. All right, so but the key is the power came from the legs. Rotational power is a little bit different. So if the squats are the key to the jumping acceleration, then rotational power is the key to the throwing stuff. So if we've seen jumping forces, well, now we've got a different sort of thing where we're moving in a different plane. An example would be a baseball pitcher, a tennis player, a kickboxer, or mixed martial arts person. So you'll find in these positions there's a different sort of movement that's the key to this, and it's the lunge. Can you see how the lunge is used? So this is more of a forward lunge, but this is a lateral lunge. The lunge is what enables the body to transfer its power from the legs through the core and out through the arms, or in this case through to the other side of the legs. Right, but there's a big massive weight transfer. The weight transfer is where the power comes from. So most popular sports conditioning exercises like the squat are performed in a linear fashion, so they don't reflect the power you need for a rotational sport. So wood chops, which we've shown many videos on the channel before with cables and various other strength things, are great for building the pattern and skill, but they don't necessarily build the power if they're not done fast enough. And the reason is because the timing's out. This is what we often see with people who put too much weight on that wood chopper, ruining their ability to actually do the pattern correctly. People using medicine balls way too heavy. They're thinking, okay, heavier is better, heavier is not better. It's better to use a lighter one and make it faster. The wind up and rotate velocity for these is really important. So it's where I see so many people ruin the wood chop exercise with a bodybuilding mentality where they don't use their legs. The legs are the key, and then all they end up doing is risk damaging their spine. So it's a classic example of throwing it into a wall, and this is very similar to boxing, really, and baseball, where the loading up the leg on this side to transfer, and there's that triple extension again, but this time it has a rotation part. So the speed of the movement of the contraction is the most important part. Plyometrics. So this is another one where we see, again, if we loaded a jumping activity like this, all we would do is make it really slow. We'd make it a great strength exercise, but it'd be absolutely useless as a power thing. To get the most out of plyos, you've got to move quickly, and again, it's the deceleration that is the most important part here. This is where you're really building the ability to load and unload, or load and explode, probably a better way of saying it. So immense levels of energy to release in a split second. It's a bit like a spring. So I've sort of, as I've written on the screen here, they're a bit like stretching out a quad spring to its fullest extent and then letting it go. So that these exercises really develop the recoil and the stretch reflex capacity in the muscles. So there's many different versions of these. Obviously great for sports, and really good for building strength in rehabilitation too. So the regular exposure to this training stimulus in muscle fibres should be able to store more elastic energy and transfer more quickly in power from the eccentric phase to the concentric phase. You can see these photos, they're moving so quick that it's blurred. So this is a cutting drill that we use, and this is also practicing the cutting drill using a medicine ball. But if we were to apply load to these, we would just completely ruin it and slow it down too much. The timing is just completely off, and that's what's the most important part. So what about if you don't play sports? And sort of come back to what we spoke to in the beginning. So it's still relevant. It's just maybe you don't need plyos or Olympic lifts, but you definitely need to do it because you're losing it really quickly. And when you lose too much, that's when it starts to change the way you move. All right. So the decline is 2 to 3 times faster than we lose muscle. So if we know we lose muscle when we get older, we lose power even faster than that. So it has a lot to do with the fast twitch fibres. So you sort of see here, I've written on the screen here. So the biceps of a newborn baby have around 5,000 fibres, while that of an 80-year-old is only 300,000. All right, so we produce less growth hormone, which leads to reduced levels of protein synthesis, and again muscle atrophy. So there's a real use it or lose it sort of theory here. So if we've got a 10% decline in muscle mass between the ages of 25 and 50, and a further 45% shrinkage by the time we reach our 80s if we don't do anything about it. So the fibres are decreasing like so much quicker than their slow twitch guys. The slow twitch guys are sort of, if they're going the other way, they're increasing, which is good for postural and stability, but not necessarily good for how we want to move. It needs to be a balance between them, and this is where we start to see the tonic and phasic imbalances sort of become further and further apart, and that's where we start to see issues with movement and obviously end up with injury and pain. So the activating the fast twitch motor units is the key to improving strength, speed and power. But unlike the slow twitch guys, which are used in our day-to-day stuff, the fast twitch guys are quite lazy and they tend not to do much. And you can sort of see all these guys are really going to be in your phasic side are very much fast twitch fibre dependent. Some of them will be switching into the other side at times, but these guys are definitely a big part of the problem we see with inhibition and weakening. So with a senior person, they found that the loss of power is a real prediction in falls. So a study found that women who fall have 24% less explosive power than their in their weaker limb than the women who didn't fall. They also noted that in older women who lived independently, poor lower limb explosive power combined with power difference between limbs may be a better predictor of future falls than the traditional measurements of strength. All right, because when we fall, there's a rapid sort of reaction to correct the fall, to explode, put that leg out in front. It's not done slowly, and it's not even strength that's important, it's the speed of it to save you that is. So this is where an example of, like, if you were training power all through your life, you would really be predicting falls. So another study used biopsy techniques in patients who suffered a hip fracture, and they found that these people had significant losses in the faster, more type 2 muscle, fast twitch fibres that are required to adjust their body explosive as a result of a trip or a slip. So those who had a higher fast twitch made up faster recovery rates even if they did fall. All right, so you can sort of see how important it is to all of us to be training power. So now, in terms of exercises, you don't have to use Olympic lifts or box jumps. They're great ones if you wanted to do them, but there's many other ways, like sled pulls. Be careful making it too heavy. If you want to make it heavy for strength, that's fine, but if you want to build power, make it a bit lighter. Step up is a great exercise. The squat press versions are awesome. I love those. All medicine ball stuff is great. Battling ropes, if they're used in short bursts, you know, like less than 10 seconds. And cutting drills like we showed before, which you can go through our channel, and there's many versions of those, lots of different plyos. They're all examples of power training. Alright, so there's many things you can use, and a lot of these we can use with older adults. I can use step-ups, I can even use cutting drills, I can do these, even ropes at times. All of these things I can do with seniors. I just got to modify the exercise to find the right one. But and the average dose is like 30s and 40 years of age, the same thing. These are all great exercises. If you've developed the skills and you keep using it, you hang on to your fast twitch fibres for longer. So I've never met a person who's had a trouble moving slowly, but I've met heaps and heaps of people who couldn't move fast even when they really needed to, as in correcting a fall. So once the ability to move fast is gone, it's very difficult to get back. So the best thing is to never lose it in the first place. So it's not just for sporting athletes, it's for all of us. So take the time to learn it, appreciate all the skills and information you need, and you will preserve this and you'll move well for the rest of your life. So, and anyway, it feels great when you can move fast. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to write something under in the comments there. Make sure you check out the description under the video, because there's heaps of links. There's a great article with a lot more detail for this, and with several examples of these exercises I've just briefly looked at. So make sure you check out the description underneath, and there's heaps of free reports and stuff that you can grab as well. Alright, so I hope you enjoy that video, and we'll see you on our next one.